Welcome to the Daily Dawg Podcast. Today is Tuesday, October 28th, and it is the week of the Georgia-Florida game. And that's right, this is the Georgia-Florida game, not the Florida-Georgia game. So let's just keep that straight, everybody. We are always keeping everything from a Georgia perspective, but come on, it just sounds better, right? The Georgia-Florida game. The Florida-Georgia game just sounds stupid and weird. Although it is worth noting, one of the great things about this rivalry, and we're just jumping right into some details right off the bat, but one of the great things about this rivalry is even the name has not ever been something we can agree on. Can't agree on what the record in the series is. We can't agree on what the name of the series is. Can't agree. I guess both schools did agree to push the media and people to stop using the world's largest outdoor cocktail party because that seemed irresponsible, and they were afraid of the repercussions that come with drunken fan brawls and bad behavior or people injuring themselves or others in the drunken festivities that come with these affairs. I don't know that a name of the game can control that very much, and it was a catchy and fun name, and it's fun when every rivalry has a fun name like that. You can just call it the Georgia-Florida game, but that's pretty straightforward and a little banal. But I do like it. But what I was going to say is I do appreciate the fact that given that the schools and the people and the fans can't even agree on it, Jacksonville and the sponsors and everybody who puts the game together, if you notice when you look around the stadium or if you've ever been there, you watch carefully on TV, the logo that they've created for the game has both Georgia and Florida on it. Has the logos for the teams, and it'll say alternatingly each and every other logo that's represented around the stadium. One will say Georgia, Florida, and the other will say Florida, Georgia. But the real way to say it is the Georgia-Florida game. The real way to represent it is that Georgia is 57-44-2 in this series, and this has been a series historically that Georgia owned. Georgia was a long-time blue blood program in college football when Florida was still just a team that people thought someday could be something. I think it was Bear Bryant who maybe was one of the first to note or publicly state that if they ever got the right coach and got the right momentum, look out that Florida would have all the resources to be great. And for a long time, they didn't have that. And but it wasn't until 1985 actually that Florida wins its first SEC championship. So we're going to touch a little bit on history of that. Today is History Week as we launch into the first of several podcasts leading up to the Georgia-Florida game. This one is just going to be about history of the series, my personal history, which again I probably right in the middle, I'm guessing, of fandom out there. I'm sure there's some fans, or I hope there's some younger fans. I don't know how many younger fans are joining in on this, and students. I know a few are, and I appreciate having you guys. And I'm sure that there's quite a number of fans that are somewhere between the 30 and 60 range, and I'm probably, while I'm not in the middle of that, I probably represent the middle of the demographic of fans out there in the world of Georgia fans. And then, of course, there's fans that are much older than me and have been going to games since long before I was born and know more about Georgia football history than even I would care to know. And they experienced it, some of the things that I only read about, they experienced them personally. And kudos to them, and thank you for being longtime Georgia fans, and hope you're out there somewhere too getting to participate. Don't know how much the older set gets into modern media and podcast, but I hope you're out there somewhere. And if you are, I'd love to hear from you. Love to get more stories. I'd love to incorporate some first-person information from people who've been to things I haven't been to. As I've told you many a time, my personal history starts when I stepped foot on campus in the fall of 1989 as a wide-eyed freshman. And I was just super excited to be at Georgia, to be at a school with a great football history and tradition. I was a sports fan from a long time before. And of course, as I've detailed, and as you might know if you know the seasons, I stepped into a big stretch of mediocrity in Georgia history. And that mediocrity, unfortunately, came smack into the rise of the Florida Gators. Steve Spurrier comes to Florida in 1990, and he makes it his mission not just to make Florida a great program, but to make Florida a program that routinely beats the snot out of the Georgia Bulldogs, and he is very successful at that. He kept a personal grudge going back to his Heisman season when we beat him in that Heisman season, and he just wanted to do all he could to exact revenge along the way. And kudos to him, he accomplished it. He was able to get a lot of his revenge. So I think I detailed this in the previous podcast or previous one or two podcasts, but in the 35 games that have taken place since my freshman year, so my personal history, and that always terrifies me a little bit when I point out that it's 35 years or 35 games of history. But in those 35 years, we are 13-22 against Florida, and that's by far our worst record against anybody during that span. Obviously, losing 9 of 10 to Alabama is sounds awful, and most of us experienced the pain of that more recently. And as I detailed leading into the Alabama game, honestly, those games have probably cost us more in terms of championship and elite opportunity. Kind of look back over the Florida history as I was getting ready for this. I mean, I know it and I remember it, but I kind of looking at some of what were some of the notable games, what were some of the big moments in the history in this last 35 years. And I don't know how many of the years in actuality Florida kept us from greater glory. Actually, when we kind of look at the Georgia-Florida teams during the last 35 years, what we see is that one has been kind of on the rise and the other's been kind of mediocre or not so much on the rise, I guess. Mediocre, not doing well. So either one, and right now we're in a stretch of dominance, obviously, where we've been hanging out in the top 5, top 10 in the AP rankings. We've got back-to-back national championships within the last 6 seasons, and we're just at the elite of the sport right now. And during this same time frame, Florida has not been elite or anywhere near where they were. But during those Spurrier era, from the 90s on, and then carried on by Urban Meyer. After him, not directly after him, but a little bit after him, Florida achieved a significant amount of greatness. And during that time, we were not always mediocre, but a big chunk of it we were. So we're going to jump into that, take a look at it real quick. Just sharing, again, these last 35 years, and I think this makes a good reference point for anybody going to history. I mean, we can go deep into the long history of the Georgia-Florida series and go back to a bunch of games that I could read you details about that I didn't go to and most of you didn't go to or don't remember. Maybe if you were third generation Bulldog and then maybe your grandparents told you about it. But I don't know how many folks have that experience either. So my freshman year, I brought this up in the last podcast. We had been on a pretty good run against Florida. And let me see if I can actually pull that up and just be clear. So we had actually won, the 1989 game, we won 17-10. And coming into that game, we were unranked and Florida was the number 10 team in the country. So again, they had Eric, I was going to say they had Eric Red. That's not who I was thinking of. They had Emmitt Smith. I'm sorry, got stuck for a minute. They had Emmitt Smith, and they were a team that was really on the rise that year and expecting great things. They came to the Georgia-Florida game, and they lost their third in a row in the series. And at that point, it had been, just looking back, that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So they had lost 10 of 12 at that point in the series. And I remember in my sort of introduction, I mentioned this the other day, was, coming into it, I thought, oh no, we're having this very mediocre season. We have a 6-6 season that year. And so we're having this very mediocre season. And I'm thinking, okay, we're going to get hammered by Florida. And everybody said, no, we beat Florida all the time. And again, at this point we're in the middle of a 9 out of 11 run, and then we'll win the 1989 game 17-10. And, just a little bit of one of those old-fashioned SEC defensive slugfest with a couple running backs going at it. But Rodney Hampton for Georgia gets the better of the day, and we win 17-10. And Ray Goff at that moment is continuing a tradition that Vince Dooley had started, which was being very dominant against Florida. But, and then, that's sort of how these things go. The coaches often seem to carry the era here. You can mark these trends. Some trends go beyond coaches, like we talked about how we've just been on an incredible run over the last 20, 25 years now with Auburn. And that has transcended multiple different coaches. So although sometimes when a team goes through multiple different coaches, that's because they're not where they want to be. And obviously, there's been a lot of news this week already. The coaching carousel keeps going. So you probably heard Les Miles already been fired after getting hammered at home. Feels like the broadcasters sort of put the nail in the coffin. They kept talking, if you watch that game where Texas A&M just drilled them. LSU was actually leading 18-14 at the half in the night game this past weekend. And A&M goes on a 35-0 run, and I got to give them credit. Felt a lot like the kind of runs the Georgia team of 2021, 22, 23 went on, where a game was close, back and forth, and then all of a sudden we'd just explode. A&M comes out of the fourth quarter, or out of the halftime, down 4, and they just explode for 35 unanswered. And Death Valley, LSU's version, clears out. The place is empty except for a huge number of A&M fans. You couldn't tell there was that many A&M fans there when the stadium was full. You could see the corner pocket where they clearly had their main group, but they concentrated in that corner. I guess they'd been scattered all throughout the stadium, and they were rocking and rolling, and they enjoyed the place. And the announcers made the point it was Kyle Field. It was like Kyle Field on the road for the A&M fans. And the more they talked about how LSU never loses at home, never gets beat badly at home, never has the stadium empty out, that fast before a game is over, the more it just felt like it was inevitable that LSU would have to do something and fire Kelly because they just had been embarrassed so badly. It's almost like a point of honor, like somebody challenging you to a duel right there on the field. So, and they did. So they go ahead and they fire LSU, or they fire Kelly despite the $53 million buyout. So there's a ton of money going to coaches this season that are not going to be coaching the rest of the season. Don't know if they'll be coaching again next year, but we're already approaching the point where at major programs around the country, we're well over 100, maybe $120 million in buyout money that's going to be handed out there to ex-coaches. So just another new aspect of the sport, right? I mean, there's always been coaching firings and there's been buyouts for a little bit now. Of course, A&M famously had the buyout of Jimbo Fisher. That was a massive amount of money. But now with the money that just seems to be flowing through the sport, it's more like the pros. And so, these guys get these contracts, they get fired, they get paid, and they move on. And I guess it could be worse. I suppose if you asked me, I would consider not working for $53 million. So if any of you are interested in that deal, let me know. Not that this is, obviously deriving any main source of income for me right now. This is more of a passion project. I hope to continue doing this and build a fan base and build the opportunity to bring more and different types of material, not just the podcast, during the football season. So far, the podcast seemed to be the main thing I'm able to get out. But, if anybody wants to, have me go to the sidelines and offer $53 million, you can talk to my agent and we'll see what we can work out. Anyway, back to Georgia, Florida. And the point I wandered off on coaches because I was just going to say the coaches in the Georgia-Florida series, more than some of Georgia's other rivals, probably dictates more when you look at these records, what we experience in these eras of Georgia or Florida dominance. But Georgia had owned Florida for quite some time, had like nearly a 20-game lead in the series coming into that 1989 season. We win that game. Like I said, it's a big upset. Georgia is unranked and having a very meh season. Florida's the 10th ranked team in the country, and Georgia comes into that game and wins the game. And little did I know, that, while all the other students and people that indoctrinated me in Georgia, Florida lore told me this is how it always goes, little did I know this would be the last time I'd get to see a win as a Georgia student. Georgia would not win a game again until actually after I moved into my home with my wife, having just been married in August. And so now I'm out of college, and now and I did not get married right out of college. We did not meet in college. We met after college, several years after college and after working. So I mean, I move on from student life to real adult life. I'm working a couple years. I meet my wife. We get married. We move in and start our new home together. And this will be that very first football season where we had to deal with what are the expectations now that you're a married couple? How are we going to set things up? We did not have, we had a sort of a townhouse style apartment. So we didn't have a lot of there wasn't a place for a den, for instance, and then a living room. So we had to negotiate the situation of having a living room and a large TV, because as a sports fan, of course, you have to have a large TV to watch sports. And of course, that's not a big deal now. It seemed to be kind of unusual or difficult to come by. Of course, you remember the tube TV era. It was hard to get a large TV because a glass tube TV that was any bigger than 13 or 20 inches, if you can remember that era of color tube TVs, were pretty dang heavy. I mean, it'd take a couple guys to move around a TV any bigger than that. You had maybe 24, and then you had the 27-inch consoles. We had actually had a hand-me-down that was one of the first of the really large screen TVs in the tube TV world. They were coming up with a 36-inch TV, which was the biggest tube TV at that point I'd ever seen. And it also came with the biggest weight. My wife tolerated this. She knew it was a big deal. I'm a movie buff and a sports fan, and she enjoys movies and she enjoys football and sports too. But this was quite the thing to have this monstrous TV in our relatively small living room. And I'm sure she would have been happy if we'd had a house already with a den or a different room, a basement or someplace where this TV could be instead of in our living room. But we had the TV in our living room. So the 1997 Florida game is one of the early games in our first married, having people come over to our house to watch a game. And of course, now I've watched Georgia lose for 7 consecutive years, the Florida game coming into this game. And when Georgia goes off and Robert Edwards goes off, as I mentioned the other day, scores 4 rushing touchdowns, and Georgia wins 37-17 in a huge upset. Number 6 Florida at that time versus number 14 Georgia. Still a big upset, and I think I either did or nearly broke the coffee table. I'm sure there was one point I jumped up so much and got my leg or foot on the coffee table, and I remember things flying and there being some level of destruction. So, which I just think of being as part of the Larry Munson legacy, right? If you think about Larry going back to like the hobnail boot call, or the famous Lindsey Scott. When Lindsey Scott finally gets to the end zone, he says, "Run, Lindsey, run," and Lindsey scores. And after there's cheering and celebration for a while, he finally starts to explain. He said, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cheer on Lindsey, but I had to cheer him on. And I got so excited, I broke my chair. I came through the chair as a metal chair with a 5-inch cushion." You might remember all that. He goes on to describe it. So all I was doing was living up to the Georgia, Florida legacy of the enthusiasm by breaking the coffee table and breaking my wife into the craziness that this would all become, right? That she just found out that she married into, with this giant TV and this obsessive, weird, crazy fan, even though she was a pretty sizable, she raised in the South on college football, SEC football. So not like she didn't know to some degree what she was getting into, but she may not have completely realized what the bargain would be until that moment. So we're going to go. So again, personal history here and gives us a last 35-year review. That's kind of why I do it. The goal is not to just keep telling you, hey, this is my life, but the sad truth about being a middle-aged Georgia fan who started in school as a freshman and is now middle-aged is I kind of feel like I do represent a very my personal history is kind of a good reflective point on most of these rivalries and the Georgia football program. We're approaching the end of, in the next couple of years, we're going to get to the end of 4 full decades, 40 years of retrospective I can offer, from my first days on campus to now, and wherever I've been and however I've watched and participated in the games. And there's a lot of funny stories there. There's stories of driving across the country during bowl game season, stuck in snowstorms, and watching the game in a snowstorm stuck in Missouri. That would be a Virginia-Georgia Peach Bowl, I think, in the 90s. There's some funny stories there. There's all kinds of interesting things. But anyway, so I'm just trying to lay down some of the retrospective last 35 years in the history. So we start off in 1989, my first year with the win. Then we lose 7 straight. Finally, we win that game in 1997, and this will be the one and only time we beat Spurrier when he's at Florida. There's a lot of Georgia fans took a lot of heart in Florida and beating Spurrier when he was at South Carolina, especially in his last season when he announced his retirement at South Carolina. And Georgia had a very monumental game against him as a coach at South Carolina. And I think, we definitely transferred a lot of our fan frustration. I don't think there would have ever normally been that much enthusiasm about just beating South Carolina like we did that day in Spurrier's last game in the Georgia-South Carolina series, but it definitely was a transference of some of this grief and agony that came over from the Florida years. And again, we're only going to beat Coach Spurrier at Florida the one time in 1997. And, of course, I didn't know that. You're certainly hoping okay, we're finally on the rise. That was Jim Donnan had taken over from from Ray Goff. The Ray Goff era had been a disappointing era, and obviously he got fired. And I've talked before about a lot of the ugliness that surrounded that, trying to oust Ray Goff, and Vince Dooley as the athletic director, with one of his former captains and assistant coaches taking over the reins, was incredibly patient in a way that almost no program is today. Ray Goff got quite a few years to work it out, never got better. He finally moved on, and to his credit, Vince Dooley looks outside of just the Georgia family tree. He kind of went that route. Ray Goff had been his 1976 SEC championship team captain, quarterback. Married a cheerleader, was just Georgia through and through. Ray Goff was. He was a graduate coach and then, assistant coach, worked his way up through the ranks, and then gets the job when Vince Dooley retires. That doesn't work out, and the world of football is changing, and I think Vince Dooley did a good job of recognizing football is changing, and so he reaches out and he hires Jim Donnan. And Jim Donnan had been at Marshall and won a national championship when Marshall was at the lower level, not in what we now call FBS or Division I. But so Jim Donnan had that experience and was clearly a smart guy, knowledgeable guy, new talent, and he did turn the program around, and he did beat Florida in this 1997 game. And he did, as we talked about during the Tennessee week, he also was the first to stop that 9-game losing streak against Tennessee with the win against Tennessee at home. So, Jim Donnan did a lot to get us going in the right direction, but unfortunately he was not able to consistently beat our rivals, and that's what we keep talking about is the rivals. And one of my big themes for this season is reminding us that even though I'm pointing to and talking about and focusing on championship and what our championship potential is, SEC and national championship potential, the first and foremost place we start and need to start as Georgia fans is, are we having fun? Is it a good season? How's the team playing? Do they represent us as fans and the university well? And, is it a fun, interesting, and enjoyable season? And I think we've gotten so used to hammering people. I've made this point before. We got so used to having overwhelming talent that I think we got used to games just being almost not even fun. And I found a certain excitement coming into this season, not knowing what's happened. And I think this team has really delivered. I am proud of the way this team has played. At 7 games into the season, 5 regular season games to go before we see what our postseason fate will be. certainly would love to not see us fall behind and have the problems we've talked about. But at the same time, you have to really love and appreciate how this team that isn't necessarily stocked at the moment with surefire, 10, number 1 through 3, first through third round draft picks, all that are going to come off the board, 10 or 15 guys in the first 3 rounds. There's guys that are going to get drafted, and there's great players on this team, and there's guys who are going to continue to develop. But it's not obvious that this is just a team full of that kind of amazing talent like we've had in the past. But they don't quit. They don't give up. They have that fire, passion, and energy. I think Kirby really chose well making that and the mantra of this season. The team has bought in. They don't give up, and they're in every game, and that resiliency is starting to show through. People have accepted, okay, look, this isn't the super talented team of the last few years, but it's still one of the most talented teams in football, like we've talked about, and they obviously in spurts can show that talent. While yes, they might fall behind 10-0 or 14-0 or 21-7 in the game, they also can dominate and control the game for parts of it against any team they've played. And so they show flashes of that talent, and it's possible they'll continue to develop towards a more dominant team like we've seen in the past. But I think it's certainly a team we can be proud of the way they represent us on the field, and it's certainly a team that is fun and exciting to watch. I certainly thoroughly enjoyed the shootout that was the Ole Miss game. And again, I think that was a real exciting moment to watch them do something special, which was, scoring on 8 consecutive drives, on just scoring on every drive to just, when it looked like Ole Miss might wrest control of that game, they just kept answering. And then finally it was the Georgia defense, who had been beleaguered for a lot of the game, but that comes up and has 3 straight just shut them down drives. And that ends up separating the game and makes it a modestly comfortable win at the end. Close. Ole Miss was going to have a chance, but it was going to take a lot, right? Once we had the 8-point lead, you really got an uphill battle to climb to drive the length of the field, score a touchdown, and then get the 2-point conversion. And even then, as a fan, Georgia fan, at that point, the worst that's going to happen is that we can, that we'll be forced into an overtime. And now you're at home in overtime. So not that means you're definitely going to win, but overtime has been generally pretty kind to us lately. So anyway, back to the Florida history. So we lose 7 in a row. We win that one game, and I'm hoping there's some momentum there. And I'm sure I know all the other Georgia fans I know at the time were like, okay, Jim Donnan's building something out of this team. They're looking better. We're back on track. We won 9 games. We had won 9 games the year before, finished in the top 25, won a bowl game. That was exciting. So we come back this year. Now we beat Florida, midway, 2/3 of the way through the season. And you're thinking this could be a great season. We do end up finishing 10-2 on this season. So it isn't as great a season as it could be, but there was a lot of potential in it. It would be Jim Donnan's best season. Unfortunately, he wouldn't be able to replicate the 10 wins again, and eventually we would let him go for sort of stalling out the progress. But he definitely moved us in the right direction. But another place he stalled out was that would be his only win, as I already said, because that's the only time we beat Spurrier. And so Florida's going to wrest control back, and not only are they going to wrest control back, they're going to come back the next year, win 38-7. The next year after that, 30-14. 34-23. These scores, some of them are bad, some of them are close. You feel like there's potential, but in the end, we're not that close, right? So we end up losing another 6 in a row. So this becomes the worst part of the Georgia-Florida rivalry at this point, right? In this stretch of time, we're going to win 1 game out of 14. So we're going to be 1-13. So 12 games under 500 just in this little chunk of this history of the Georgia-Florida series. From there, things start to right the ship. And again, I mentioned this previously, starting to talk about the record. It's all a little bit about perspective. My perspective is kind of interesting or different, I think, because I lived through it. And so it created sort of this, I was always waiting to see, because again, one game doesn't, look, you win a game, you're like, oh, thank goodness we won a game. And hey, you can taunt the fans, you can go out and you can do the Gator chop, against as you're walking out of the stadium. It's great to be a Gator Hater, say it's great, and mock them in that way, right? So that's fun, right? And again, rivalries. This is fun. This is what we love about college football. The chance to make it personal, but in a fun way, in this way where we get behind our school, others get behind their school. You live and die by your school. You stand with the bad times. You stand with the good times. So that's a good time when you win. But when you lost 13 out of 14 in a series, one game is great, but then what you're hoping is you want to win 2 or 3 in a row, maybe 4 in a row. Establish that, okay, hey, we're not just the team that loses to these guys. And that's the point, right? Is because there's a history to this. This isn't just pro sports where it's like, well, whichever team is good, and if we're good, then whichever team we have to beat to get to the playoff, then we get to the playoff. I mean, that's what I hope we get to avoid a little bit, this playoff that has brought us to college football. And then the Georgia mentality that we've changed a little bit into being championship or bust. That's what I guess I'm preaching against all throughout this season is, hey, let's remember to get back to a place where we appreciate the team going out and giving us these fun moments to cheer and root for, to being a team we can be proud of, however they display themselves on the field, but they play with honor, that they fight, that they never give up, and that they don't do embarrassing, stupid things like maybe rip somebody's shoe off on the field and then throw it downfield for a personal foul. And, largely Georgia plays have always represented the university well. We don't have a lot of those kind of stupid things. You don't see that quite so much against in our world. So what I do think is, that's the thing is, right? So the Florida game is an annual deal, and it's not as personal for me, even though I have a lot of family in Florida. It's not as personal for me in the sense that somehow I don't have a lot of football family and people who have a lot of Florida ties that I can mock directly. I do have one coworker. He's a lifelong Florida fan. I really like him, so I choose not to mock him. I usually actually try to be supportive and talk about, hey man, maybe Florida's on the rise, maybe not. Well, here's what's going to be good or bad. So I'll commiserate with him rather than mock him. So again, you can choose what you want to do in these things, right? Because it's all personal. But there's a sort of a group family dynamic that comes to the Georgia-Florida game because of the uniqueness of the situation in Jacksonville, where you have the neutral site game and it's a 50-50 crowd split from the middle of the end zone all the way around one side to the middle of the other. And so you have this equal crowd. You're going to this sort of quote unquote neutral site, and depending on what's been going on in the history of the series or the game, some people moan and complain, how is it a neutral site when it's an hour drive from Florida's campus and in the state of Florida. And, look, game's always going to have to be somewhere unless somebody builds a split stadium that's literally right on the Georgia-Florida line. And that would be cool if somebody came up with that idea. But Jacksonville's about as close as we get to that. So, and Georgia fans have been happy for generations. This game has been held in Jacksonville since the 30s. So people do have family traditions that date back generations, 2-3 generations or more now, of spending this weekend at the end of October, 1st of November, down at the beach. Family vacation at the beach, take your beach pictures, your Christmas vacation, your Christmas card pictures on the beach, go to the Georgia-Florida game, get some beach time. This is the first week really that we've had substantially sort of cool, wet weather. So I'm not sure how much it's going to be a big relief to everybody heading down to the beach. We get to go to the beach. It's not like we've been overwhelmed with cold weather yet this year, but in days gone by, that used to seem to be more of a thing. You get a little break from the cold weather here at the end of October, November, going to the beach and going to the game. And so there's a lot of investment in that, and that's been going on for generations. So even if you don't know a ton of Florida fans personally, there's this opportunity, especially for fans that go to the game, where it's going to be a split group. And some people, there's going to be that line of people, a couple hundreds or thousands of people, depending on how many actually meet up, where they're literally going to be Georgia and Florida fans side by side, and you're going to come in and out of the stadium with them, and it's going to be a lot different number than just the experience you have on campus, right? A true neutral site tailgate setup, neutral entrance in and out of the stadium, neutral seating in the stadium, chance to cheer loudly and lustily when your team is doing great, and when the other team, they're going to try to take it. You got both bands battling each other. It's just a unique and exciting experience. And so, you know, even if it's not personal, there's enough, being border states and being the two most populous states in all of the South, Georgia and Florida becoming the two of the biggest population centers in the country, then, you know, you just have this growing sense that you can always run into Florida fans or Georgia fans back and forth wherever you are. And so, you know, that makes the rivalry fun. And so part of what makes it a rivalry, like I said, not just a pro series, is that the history matters. And, you know, one of the first things you win a game, like back in 1997, you're like, yeah, we won. We beat you guys by 20. You guys were expected to win by double digits and you lost by double digits. And then they just say, yeah, hey man, you got us, you know, and good for you. I mean, you should win 1 out of every 7 or 8 games, right? I mean, you get that kind of comeback, and that's what so this is my point, is like, okay, you've got to have your team respond and try to get back in the series a little bit. The history of this thing's going to matter, because you can't just hang your hat on any one game in a series like this, in a rivalry like this. So for me, we win that first game, then we lose 7 in a row. Then we win the one great game, and that's really exciting. We're hoping we're building some momentum. No momentum whatsoever. And in fact, you know, the Jim Donnan era is going to end up not going where we hoped it would. It started out with great promise, and he did a good job of restoring order, but we don't get to where we're regularly beating Florida. In fact, we only beat them that one time. We lose 6 in a row. And then finally, order starts to be restored in the 2004 series. Now, Mark Richt, unfortunately, for all the great things Mark Richt did, he did not exactly just turn the series. It wasn't like Vince Dooley. Again, when Vince Dooley took over at Georgia, he just dominated Florida throughout his career. When Spurrier took over at Florida, he dominated Georgia throughout his career. So at this point, we haven't found a coach. So, you know, Mark Richt's going to win the 2004 game. Mark Richt takes over in 2002. He's going to win actually he took over in 2001, I'm sorry. But he's, his first really great season's the 2002 season, but we don't beat Florida that year either. We'll get to that in a minute. He's going to win the 2004 game. He's going to win the 2007 game, 11, 12, and 13. So he does get a little run of 3 in a row. So, you know, that's great. But then he's going to lose 14 and 15. And I alluded to this the other day. These are going to be the games that maybe sort of put the nail in the coffin, where people start to realize. And again, that's the importance of these rivalries, right? Is you look at all the things Mark Richt had done, and he had definitely advanced beyond what Jim Donnan had been able to do, right? Mark Richt's able to get us to a 13-win season. He's able to get us to a couple SEC championships. He's able to get us to the number 2 ranking in the country, actually even a preseason number 1 ranking coming into the 2008 season. So he's a final number 2 ranking at the end of the 2007 season. So, I mean, Mark Richt is, again, just short of the top, right? Just not quite able to bust through the ceiling of national championship, but first SEC championship in 20 years, starts appearing in the SEC championship game, which we hadn't been able to do until that point. And he starts really bringing Georgia back, recruiting, overall perception of the program, moving us back from just being a good program, a long-time blue blood who can have a good season, to now we're moving back up to the elite, year in and year out elite status. But he's going to have, what is it? I didn't actually count this up, and I should have done this before, but let's just do that. He's going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 games against Florida. That makes sense because he coached 15 seasons. I guess that would have been could have figured that out a little easier. But so he's going to have 15 games against Florida. He's going to end up winning 5. So he's going to go 5 and 10 against Florida. That's certainly better than the combined 1 and 13 of the previous 14 years. Okay, so you have the previous 14 years, and then you have the Mark Richt era, which is another 15 years. So those compare pretty favorably. And these are the first 30 years of my time. since I was a freshman, really attached to the university. And so, yeah, this is a turning of the corner. So this Mark Richt era, when he starts winning in 04, 07, and then 11, 12, and 13 all combined, in that chunk of time, in a 10-year span, we're going to go 5-5. And so, again, good news is the series has turned around. We are no longer the doormat. We are no longer the whipping post for Florida, where they just get to beat up on us over and over again. Now the series is much like a typical SEC series against SEC heavyweights in the conference. Like, we win 5, you win 5. That's still not enough to kind of correct the imbalance that had happened for those years, right? And so when you look at it in the big picture, like you go all the way out, you can go all the way to the 2017 game. So Kirby takes over, obviously, in 2016. He loses his first game. That's a bad omen. But he's going to turn around and he's going to go now on a run of, I was just looking again to make sure, he's going to win 7 of the next 8. And that's where we are right now. We've won 7 of the last 8 against Florida. So Kirby has now completely reversed this. And he's shown, a trend. So he's got 9 games already that he's played against Florida. He's won 7 and lost 2. So excellent record. I mean, it's not 9-0. And he is against other teams. Okay. There's other rivals that he has yet to lose to. So it's not as dominant as it could be, but this is a huge turnaround. I mean, no other coach in all of my time since I stepped foot on campus in 1989 has come anywhere near this. And this is definitely turning the series back around. And we're growing back that dominance that we once had in the record, where it was down to 6-8 games, where it had been in the 20s, before, as far as over 500. So now we're building back up, and we're back to, 56, 44, and 2 in the series. And we're gaining some ground again. And no matter how you look at it, you can go all the way back to that 2004 game, and you can say, well, then in these last, we're 12-9 in those games. So that's good. So again, overall, for the last 21 years, the series has been slightly favoring Georgia. In the last 8 years, the series has been completely favoring Georgia, just dominant, 7 out of 8. Or you can look at the last 15. We talked about this in the other podcast, where we're 10 out of the last, we've won 10 of the last 14. So it just depends on where you look at it. For me, I wrote it down this way. I think it's kind of interesting, because basically the flip-flop goes like this, because I was always looking for that momentum, and we finally got there. These last, again, 21 years, last 21 years, we've at least been on the winning side in this series again. Not dominant until these last 7-8 years. But here's what it looked like on paper for me. Win 1, lose 7. Win 1, lose 6. Win 1, lose 2. Win 1, lose 3. So that gets us to the worst part of it, right? At this point, we're 4-18 in the 22 games since I stepped foot on campus. Then for the first time, we win more than one at a time. Okay. We win 3 in a row, 2011, 12, and 13. And that's exciting. And now I'm really hoping we're on our way. And then we suffer the disappointment of, nope, we turn back around and then we lose 3 now in a row. Now you can still look at it and say, hey, and I remember thinking this in the time. And I remember some of my buddies and Georgia football friends, we talked about this. Hey, look, at least it's even, right? We're 3-3 in the last 6 games. I mean, it's not what it used to be. We're not just getting our butt kicked every year. We're not just winning one, every 5 years or 8 years or whatever. So yeah, but we win. We have our first 3-game winning streak since I, became, for me, I guess I keep referring this time, but you know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to stop saying it since then. Since 1989, we have our first 3-game winning streak. But then we immediately follow that up with a 3-game losing streak. But then we come back again with a 3-game win streak. Then we lose 1, and now we've won 4. So we're on a 4-game winning streak right now. And again, that's 7 of the last 8. And that 4-game winning streak is by far the longest winning streak of my fandom time since 1989. So we had one other 3-game win, or we've had 2 3-game winning streaks, and then now the 4-game win streak. So we own the longest win streak in the series already. Or I think both teams have had 7-game win streaks. So we have a pretty strong series record. Again, we're well over 500 in the series. And so we started correcting. So basically at this point, I'm objectively, I'm just looking to keep adding. I mean, I'd love to just continue that dominance that we've had, winning, I'd love to see us win 5, 6, 7 games at this point in the relationship in the series. And we should, because right now, even though we have maybe taken that step back from that dominant team, as we keep talking about all season, Florida is a team in chaos. As you know, they fired their coach last week, and it's becoming a race. I think Auburn fans maybe right now are sitting around. And if you watched SEC Shorts, they've kind of played on this the last 2 weeks. Auburn fans are, sitting around waiting probably to wonder, hey, when does Hugh Freeze get fired, right? Oh man, Florida fired their coach, LSU fired their coach. Come on, why can't we fire our coach? I don't know for sure that that's what's going to happen. I think Hugh Freeze was on the bubble. I think last week, if you were watching, I didn't watch any of this game. I saw some other games, and I saw it coming across on the ticker on the bottom of the screens. I saw that Auburn was down to Arkansas at one point, like 24-10, I think, in the second half. They came back to win the game, but I'm pretty sure that Hugh Freeze would have also been fired this week. It might have been a race to see who could fire first, LSU or Hugh Freeze. If Hugh Freeze had lost to Arkansas, I don't think he would have survived the week. He did win the game, and certainly beating Arkansas this year, a team that's already also fired their coach, is probably not going to get anybody super excited. But, anyway, so that's the series. So I'm still looking for some momentum. So for me, 13-22 as a fan, since I've, and so we're nowhere near the payback yet. I mean, until we get that at least back to 500, realistically, I know you're going to lose some, and Florida is, a really solid program, and they've got a lot of talent. Even right now, even the team that's on the field, this is a dangerous team as we come to this game this week. I mean, they have a really, really good defense. Their stats are probably dragged down by the fact that their offense has been so terrible. The offense has struggled, although they have an elite freshman wide receiver who made a big impact once he was able to start playing. Lagway, obviously, their quarterback, 5-star talent, is somebody that everybody has said is a legit 5-star quarterback. He struggled under the system they have going right now, and we'll get into more of the details and break down what they do and don't do. We're not going to be able to go as far into our breakdowns as normal because, again, we have no coach to compare against now. We have nothing to look at in terms of tendencies, and there's a pretty good chance that the current staff, the resurrected, what's left of the staff, or the people that are in charge now, are going to do everything they can to use the off week and the coaching change to break as many tendencies as they can and try to, set us back. And also, as we've been talking about, we seem susceptible. One thing our coaches, I don't think, have done that great a job of doing is protecting against other teams being able to look at Kirby Smart's Georgia and say, hey, this is who this team is these last 10 years. This is what they're going to do. This is what they want to do. So here's what we're going to do to start the game, and we're going to come out hot, and we're going to do this on offense. We're going to do this on defense, and we think we can catch them and get some advantage early in the game, and hopefully that'll last. And that has happened multiple times. Teams have jumped us, been able to take advantage of us not breaking tendencies very much, and they clearly know what we will do and what they can do to exploit that, both offensively and defensively. And we have struggled in the beginning of games because of that. And so the only thing I can say that's a little bit offsetting to that downside of that is that Florida has the off week to prepare, and we've already seen Auburn had the off week to prepare coming into the game. You see how that worked for them in the first half of the game. Florida has the off week, but the good news is we have the off week. But our coaches haven't shown much of a desire to change up or bust tendencies very much. So I'm sure, and this has all the makings of, if you are the people at Florida, you should be doing nothing right now. There's nothing to keep other than a strong defensive performance so far in the season, especially on offense. There's literally nothing they should hold on to at this point. So busting tendencies, breaking everything down, redoing everything, coming out with just surprise after surprise in the first half of this game certainly seems like what they should do. So that's a little bit of a look ahead. That's just a guess, though. That's what I would do. But, we have nothing to go on. So I don't think we'll be able to get a lot deeper than that in our analysis as we get closer to the game. Going back to the history, though, I want to note a couple notable games. I think one of the games that stands out the most for me in all the games was the 1992 game, because that was the year that was also a year that we go 10-2, and we've talked about this one before, and this we talked about this season in the Tennessee game, because we'll lose the Tennessee game. Like I said, this is where we lose the game on a fourth down play near the end. Tennessee wins by a narrow score of like 34-31, and that sets us behind in the SEC. This is the first year of the SEC divisions, first chance to go to the SEC championship game, and we have one of the most talented teams in the country. This is Eric Zier's got some experience now. He's back as a second-year starter. You have Garrison Hurst, who's a legitimate Heisman Trophy contender. You've got some really good wide receivers. You got one or two really good offensive linemen that are going to go pro, and you've got what Georgia always had and still has is a good history of strong defense. And so this is a team that really had the potential, I think, to be more than just 10-2 and number 8 in the country. And the 2 was the Tennessee game, which we already covered when we did the Tennessee, and then it's going to be this Florida game. And this was, I think, one of Ray Goff's worst coaching performances, because this is where he had a superior team, or at least a really good team. I mean, Georgia was ranked 7th and Florida was ranked 20th. I mean, rankings don't always prove everything, but that's what the situation was at that time. Georgia comes in hot and having recovered and won like 5 or 6 games in a row after the Tennessee game, back in the high level of the rankings. And this is our opportunity to take control of the SEC East. And if we win this game, I think we clinch. I think Tennessee lost the same weekend. So if we win the Florida game this year, we would have clinched the SEC East. And so we would have represented Georgia in the SEC championship. Now, I'm not going to tell you that would have led to getting us into the national championship, because Alabama's going to win the national championship in this season, 1992. They're going to be undefeated, and they're going to look pretty dominant. And they're going to beat a Miami team that people thought they were significant underdogs against. So Florida goes to the SEC championship game, and they lose to that Alabama team, although not by much, 28-21. So it was a one-score game. I don't remember the flow of the game. I don't remember if Alabama had a big lead and Florida closed it late. I just remember watching it, and I know that the score was 28-21, and that Alabama won. And I was happy because, hey, I'd take Alabama over Florida any day, at least back then. So, and it's probably still true, by the way. But when I say Ray Goff does one of his worst coaching jobs, he's got Garrison Hurst, who's well in the thick of the Heisman Trophy, maybe even the leading Heisman Trophy candidate coming into this game on the winning streak they come into. And he's been having dominant performance after dominant performance. So Florida gets the ball first, they score a field goal. Georgia gets its first possession, and on the first play from scrimmage, they do they go off tendency. So Ray Goff does a smart thing, like I've been talking about here. He does something that nobody expects. Frank Harvey, number 7, was a fullback, and pretty athletic fullback, but he was largely, his job was to block for Garrison Hurst. And we still employed fullbacks back then. And but on the first play of scrimmage, Harvey gets the ball Garrison Hurst is lined up deep behind him, and it looks like Harvey's in a position to block, looks like it's going to be a toss sweep. They give Harvey the sort of the belly jab of the ball right at the line. He busts through a tackle or two right at the line of scrimmage. Everybody was either flowing, I think, where Garrison Hurst was, or up close to the line, expecting a run. The blocking is perfect. He gets the ball so quickly, he busts through the line in a step, and there's nobody there. And so this is a fullback, mind you, who takes the ball 80 yards to the house right down the middle of the field for a 7-3 lead. And so right off the bat, you're like, boom, we're in the lead. We're, lots of momentum. Everybody's fired up. Goff is going to fall in love with this, or maybe it's not just Ray Goff. I mean, to be honest, I don't remember who the offensive coordinator was at that time. It might have been Wayne McDuffie. I remember he was one of the offensive coordinators when Eric Zier was quarterback. And he had been an NFL guy and a Falcons guy, I think. But anyway, the combination of coaching. Look, when you're the head coach, though, if you don't like how the plays are being called or you don't like what's going on, you can still put your foot down and say, hey, let's give our guy the ball. Garrison Hurst is going to get the ball 14 times. He was carrying the ball an average of 20, 30 times a game because he's a star tailback. He gets a couple passes, but he's going to be held for 14 carries and 41 yards in the game, and less than 100 yards combined overall passing catching. And it's going to be like the only game he's been held or maybe only the second game all year he's been held down like that. And it's not just that he was held down. The 14 carries is also a really low number. And Frank Harvey is also going to end up with like 10 or 14 carries. I couldn't find the box score. I wanted to look up the box score and see if I could tell you exactly how many carries. I remember watching at the time, but it just seems like they fell in love with the idea that they caught Florida napping on that first play. It was a great idea of busting tendencies like we've been talking about, catching the team napping, especially early in the game when they don't expect you to pull something like that. But, Frank Harvey was not Garrison Hurst, and, you dance with who brung you. And so the ball should have gone to him more. We end up losing 20. We were down 23-7 at one point in the game. We fight back. We get it to 26-24. It's a 2-point game, but we can't get any closer than that, and we lose the game. And again, this probably doesn't knock us out of the national championship. I mean, it knocks us out of a chance for the national championship. We certainly would have had the opportunity because Alabama is going to win the SEC championship and have that opportunity. Now, we still would have had the loss to Tennessee earlier, so I'm not sure how it would have played out in this. This is the bowl and pull era, right? So I'm not sure how it would have played out as far as what game we would have made it into or not with one loss versus Bama having no losses. Had we won the SEC championship, so had we beaten Florida and then beat Alabama in the SEC championship game, who knows what heights we could have ridden up to. And I think, when you get that kind of momentum, I think sometimes the line for coaches is finer than we think. I think sometimes like that game, I'm not saying Ray Goff would have gone on to be a great national championship, 3-time national championship winning coach, but the Ray Goff era might have had more momentum and might have been better had they been able to ascend. Because sometimes I think what happens is you do see a coach. I mean, look, all of these guys, I've said this before, every coach out there knows more about. They've been playing football since Pee-wee football. They played their whole lives most of the time. Then a lot of times they go to graduate school, they study under coaches, and then you grad assistants, and then they become coaches. These guys, it's not like when they start losing and your team isn't doing what you think it should do under the coach. Go back to Ray Goff. When Ray Goff has a bunch of 5-6 and 6-5 seasons and needs to be fired as the Georgia coach because he wasn't taking Georgia where it needed to be. It's not like Ray Goff suddenly stopped knowing anything about football. Woke up one day, he's like, football. What is football? How do I coach this sport? I don't know. And yes, he was not a modern coach like we have now, but he did some things. He brought in a passing attack and again, I think an offensive coordinator who brought more of a pro-style passing attack, and he modernized the team to some degree, and he was not just stuck in the past. So, I mean, it's very possible that if he wins that game, finishes the season on a high note, that a certain momentum that comes with being at that level might carry you. I think you can certainly see now some of the games that even this year that we won, maybe even last year, some of these games are games that you just seem to win. You saw it for years with a team like Alabama, a team that's so used to winning championships, SEC and national championships. You always see these things like the TV will buzz in, right? Nowadays you get little things that pop up, but they would cut in, like game break coming in on, over on such and such channel, so-and-so and so-and-so are in a, tied in the fourth quarter. It could be a major upset. I mean, we all tune into that. Everybody's like, if number one Alabama, even before we had this problem we've had getting past Alabama, if number one Alabama is losing to or tied, late in the game with Kentucky, everybody in the country turns in to see, it's like, oh, it's 10-10 in the fourth quarter, Alabama, Kentucky, and Kentucky has the ball, because everybody wants to see the upset. We all root for the upsets. And yet they don't happen. And a lot of times they don't happen because, again, the other team is more talented. So the more times that Alabama gets to run plays and the more times Kentucky gets to go plays, every time they run a play, well, the more talented guys are playing against the less talented guys, and that should win out in the law of averages, the number of plays you play. But there's also, I think, just this intangible that comes from when you just know you have championship DNA, when you know you're supposed to win, when you've won these kind of games before and you expect to win them. It just seems to be those kind of things happen. It happened again this last weekend, right? If you're watching, Alabama is down 8 points to South Carolina, and it was just the opposite of what I was just saying, I was feeling reasonably comfortable by the time we have an 8-point lead late in the game against Ole Miss. I mean, I wanted that touchdown when we settled for that last field goal, our 8th drive that we score, and we did settle for 3 field goals in the game. Had we gotten a couple more, like I said, I made this point in the previous podcast, if you looked at the Ole Miss game, we outgained them 5-10 to 350 something. I mean, we actually fairly much dominated the game statistically. And I think one of the big reasons they were incredibly successful, they scored 5 touchdowns in their first 5 drives. We settled out of our 8 drives that we scored, which was fantastic. We scored on all 8 drives, but we settled for 3 field goals. And had we gotten just 2 more touchdowns out of that and just settled for 1 field goal in the game, then it would have been a comfortable 14, 15-point win. So, and the stats sort of bear that out a little bit. So the game actually felt a little more comfortable, I think, when I sort of rewatched it and looked at some of the details about it and thought, wow, we really did play very well in that game. Anyway, Alabama this last week, they're on the road against South Carolina. It's late in the fourth quarter, and they're down 8 points, and South Carolina has the ball and a chance to maybe score and make it a 2-score game and almost put the game out of reach, or at least bleed a lot of clock. And then just this kind of thing that just seems to happen to Alabama. And now, admittedly, I'll say it happens to us too. Just that sort of that championship belief, that mentality, that DNA, that aura that goes with championship teams just sort of kicked in out of nowhere. Lenora Sellers, who's been playing great all game, and he's tough and physical, he gets the ball ripped out of his hands in a scrum. He fumbles on his own 38-yard line. Alabama goes down the field, scores the touchdown, gets the 2-point conversion to tie, and well, actually, no, I'm sorry. They drove down the field when they were down by 8. I said that wrong. They get the touchdown and the 2-point conversion. They are tied. Lenora Sellers fumbles when they are tied. South Carolina maybe has the chance with a couple minutes left to drive and get the game-winning field goal, like a walk-off field goal. And instead, Alabama gets the fumble and a scrum, goes the other way, and doesn't even have to settle for the field goal. They end up with the touchdown, and they end up winning. And it just it's been documented several times. I'm sure you've seen it. The student section was so pumped, so fired up to rush the field for the win that they saw coming. There's, you can see they just all amass at that one end zone, and then they all just end up standing there, disheartened and in disbelief. But that's what happens, and I think we've seen that for our team. Our team has kind of moved into that category where you just win these games almost out of expectation now, which is great. I'd rather have that than not. So that was the 1992 game. That one stung. It was a chance to maybe ascend to an elite level, and it didn't. And Ragoff kind of blew the coaching on that one, I think. The 2002 game is another one in which we go 13-1. We're going to finish number 3 in the country. We're going to win the SEC championship for the first time in 20 years. Everything about this season's great. It's the rejuvenation we've all been looking for. It's this Mark Richt's second season. He has that second season coaching phenomena where he's just exploded for great things here in his second season. And but the net is we're still going to lose to Florida. Florida's still going to have the edge on us. They're going to have beaten us. DJ Shockley was hurt. We had to go with a backup. The offense sort of sputtered. I mean, it just kind of felt like that. Again, the reverse mojo, right? Everything goes the other way in this game. And coming into it, coming out of it, everything else in the season goes great. That loss holds us down. Again, I'll probably look at the big picture in the season. Miami and Ohio State go undefeated, both of them. They were basically number 1 and number 2 all season. So even if we win the Florida game and we go undefeated, we're probably still 3rd in the polls. I mean, maybe they look at our schedule, but Miami and Ohio State had a lot of momentum coming in on those seasons and a lot of belief from people out there. And we might have just still been on the outside looking in. I still would have rather been on the outside of looking in as the number 3 undefeated team, though, as opposed to wherever we were after we lost to Florida, then had to work our way back, ultimately getting to the Sugar Bowl and destroying Florida State and having the third, a 13-1 season, and definitely a lot of respect and a lot of credibility. And we do finish number 3. So I guess maybe in the end it didn't change that much. But it certainly felt like a blow that here in our first championship season in 20 years, we still have the Florida loss hanging over our head. Come back the next year, basically same thing. We're ranked number 4. They're 23. The 2003 team, we lose 16-13. In fact, this is an important thing to note because this is the Ron Zook era. And so we always think about it, and this just sort of shows where the history of this, again, how momentum sometimes seems to get into one of these series. Ron Zook is a completely average coach. He's going to last not quite 3 full seasons and get fired. He goes like 8-5, 8-5, 7-6, which right now might even feel good for Florida. But at that time, that was considered a huge disappointment because he's sandwiched in between Steve Spurrier and then Urban Meyer, right? So Ron Zook. So Ron Zook is the low point in a 20-year span that includes Spurrier and Meyer in Florida football. And even during this 20-year span, we managed to lose 2 out of 3 to Ron Zook. We got zooked. I always think of it as, like you get rickrolled, right? If you hear never gonna let you go, Rick Astley, right? We got zook rolled. I mean, I just can't believe that we lost to this incredibly mediocre coach. And if you watch the games, they were just frustrating. That 16-13 game in 2003 was just like a game we could not. I mean, they did very little. They started off great. They got like up 10-0, and they just held us off. And we were a much better team. We still end up going to the SEC championship game, losing to LSU. So again, I don't know. That means there was a championship in the offing had we beaten Florida, but it's just frustrating, right? It's just like, here we are trying to build some momentum. We're at this point in the context of things, we're finally the better team, and it's not working for us here. So, all right, then, I guess the other thing, that was really frustrating to watch, just for context, those last 35 years is in that 4-18 span that I was talking about coming into those first 22 games. Florida's going to win 3 national championships. Again, Florida they'd been a sort of the sleeping giant that people always thought could be a better team. Spurrier ignites them. He ignites them so well they dismiss a mediocre Ron Zook in 3 seasons, and they're not wrong because they get Urban Meyer, and Urban Meyer wins 2 national championships. So Spurrier wins 1, they win 2. Urban Meyer wins 2. And so while we're sitting here just trying to ascend back to getting control of this series and not losing all the time to Florida and getting back to an elite level, and we're slowly doing that, here's Florida going from never having even won an SEC championship until the 80s to now they've won multiple SEC championships, and they are a 3-time national championship team in the span where we can't even win an SEC championship, or we do finally start winning 2 SEC championships during that time, but still the 2002 and 2005 championship happened during that era. But again, Florida's completely outclassed us in that regard by getting 3 national championships. And you look at the SEC East, again, Florida's in our way. Every time Florida wins the SEC East, obviously we can't if they did. And several of those seasons they beat us and then won the SEC East as a result. And there is no more East and West anymore. And again, the history buff, the counter that I am, keeping track of all these stats and, wanting to have the historical edge in every category we can. One of the things I was very disappointed about is even though we made a huge run at the end, before the dissolving of the East and West divisions, we weren't able to catch up to Florida. They had a huge lead to start. But they finished with 13 SEC championship game appearances. We finished with 12. Of course, Alabama leads everybody with more. I don't remember. I didn't keep the number. Didn't stick in my head, so I'm sorry. But we're second. And we're third. Florida's second. 13 all time. We ended up at 12 all time. And they have a better record in the game. They go 7-6 in those 13 games. We are in our 12 games. We are 8, I guess, something like that. No, I guess that's not true. I think it's 5. I think we're 5-7 in the 12 games. So, just another place. So I'm still looking This is my point, is that, look, we've still got work to do. Yes, we've won 7 out of 8, but we still owe Florida. We can still get this thing back to even over the next however many years. We're still 9 games under 500 in the last 35 years. They still have won 3 national championships in those last 35 years or less, and we've won 2. So we've got work to do. We can win, and they've won 7 SEC championships in that span when we've won 5. We're second best all time in SEC championships. We still have a sizable lead on them overall in all-time SEC championships, but in this last 35 years, they've really done that. So, another thing I wanted to talk about, history, a little bit about the series. Some of you may know, many of you, especially if you're students, and even if you're not students, you probably walk through the Tate Center. Years ago, I was walking through the Tate Center. I see this big thing there in the middle in the hallway that links the old part of the Tate Center. It was there when I was a student to the newer part. And big, tall oar. I'm like, what the heck is that? It's the Okefenokee oar. So hopefully you've heard about this. This is actually a trophy that's been established for this game. So the Georgia-Florida game, while having a lot of great traditions and fun things about it, and even another really cool thing, by the way, the Georgia-Florida game, as you also may know, has the Georgia-Florida Hall of Fame. This game is such an institution of its own. It has its own Hall of Fame just to recognize people who've made significant impact on just this game, this series, which that's pretty cool, right? I mean, that's a neat history. So, but along with the Georgia-Florida Hall of Fame, we never really had a championship. You see a lot of these great rivalry games, these state border rivals where there's some sort of a trophy, Minnesota, and somebody play for the little brown jug, and I'll mention another one here in a second because I'll make the point I'm getting at. In 2009, the student body or the student government people of Georgia and Florida got together and they made this trophy out of this oar. This oar was apparently donated to Florida, and it's really pretty cool. It's huge. It's 12 foot. And it's carved out of a 1,000-year-old cypress tree that was in the Okefenokee swamp near the Georgia-Florida border. And apparently this was donated to Florida. And somehow Florida and Georgia student governments got together and decided that this oar would be the trophy. And on each side of the oar, big flat side, one side is the Georgia side, has Georgia logo, university seal, and the Georgia wins recorded on it and information about Georgia on it. The flip side has Florida. I actually have no idea what's on the Florida side because I've seen it in person. If you see it there in the Tate Center, it's in a glass case and it's just always facing out the Georgia side. So I really don't know what's on the other side. But I understand it does have the Florida logo, Florida, the university crest or whatever, and probably the times they've won. So this was introduced in 2009. So it's pretty new to the series, but it's a great trophy. It's really good looking. It's as cool as anything anybody's doing out there. And I think we're blowing it in a couple ways. And the biggest is that they should take it to the game. This thing apparently changes hands when the student governments get together and have a meeting, the two schools, and they exchange it at some sort of meeting during maybe not even during or right close to football season. I'm not even sure what the timing is, but whatever it is, it's not at the game. It's sometime outside of the game. Student government exchange of Georgia and Florida exchange the oar, should it need to be exchanged. Of course, it's been living in the Tate Center for 7 of the last 8 years. It's been there for 4 years in a row now, and we need to keep it 5 and beyond, right? So let's have it as almost a permanent trophy there in the Tate Center. That's what we're hoping for or looking for. But I'm just really disappointed that we haven't come up with the idea of bringing this thing to the game because it's really fun when you see the players grab the trophies for these strange little things. The Big Ten, this is one thing you got to give them credit for. A lot of Big Ten schools have these really, like I said, the little brown jug, the little oaken barrel, I don't know. There's all these different, the Floyd trophy, which somebody has, which is a pig trophy. So all these rivalry games, people have these trophies. And the old Mississippi State game every year played towards the end of the year, the Egg Bowl, as it's called. It's called the Egg Bowl because somebody made this trophy, and I don't know for sure if it was supposed to be a football, but it looks like it was supposed to be a football. But instead of being football shaped, it's egg shaped, and it's kind of metal and gold or silvery or whatever. So it looks like a big fancy egg. And so the trophy looks like an egg, so people started calling the game the Egg Bowl because they're playing for the egg trophy. It's not, there's no egg thing involved. They're not egg farmers, and that wasn't intentional. So it's just the trophy can be so meaningful in these games is what I'm getting at. And so we have this huge ore, which is great. It perfectly reflects the border idea. It's got history. It's a 1,000-year-old cypress tree this thing was carved out of. And this thing should be coming to the game and should be exchanged. I would love to see, one of my favorite college football things is I'm pretty sure it's Cal-Stanford game. But I know Cal's involved. I think it's Cal-Stanford. And it's the axe. They play for the axe. And I think it used to be a whole axe, but at this point, it's just the axe head mounted to like a plaque. But the students for the team, the student government people, same kind of thing, like student government exchanges this thing or whatever. I don't know how they pick the people or their pep squad or whatever, but they will gather after the game. Right after the game, there's a group of people that are deciding, these students. They gather. They all have matching shirts and what, like the cow. Like the time I saw it on video, the cow doing it. The cow was blue and yellow, so they all had like blue and yellow striped rugby shirts. And so they got together and they did like a little cheer, and then they run over to the other sideline where the trophy, or wherever the neutral part of the field where the trophy is displayed or put out, and they run over there as a group, and they get it as a group, and they bring it back to their team sideline, and then they all hold it up and cheer, and the fans cheer, and it's like this big great tradition. It's just funny. It's like a rugby scrum. I mean, they're already wearing rugby shirts, and it's like this rugby scrum. They run over, grab the trophy, run back together as a group, and they that's what we should be doing. We should have a whole group of student government students or special, it should be an award, like some sort of award that we hand out to students during the academic years or whatever. We could do it for academics. We could do it for citizenship. There could be several different people. You could have a team of 20 or 30 people and that are awarded throughout the year that they get to be on the field with the special shirt. And when we win the game, go collect the trophy. So you bring the trophy every year, you put it in the neutral spot at the field, you're playing for the trophy. And then when your team wins, you run over, your group runs over and gets it. And especially it's an ore. I mean, you could have it's 12 foot long. The thing is huge. So 20 people could be holding this thing up and waving it around and fans cheering. And that's what we need to be doing. So I don't know why we're not doing that yet, but those of you who've heard me say it, I'm right. So start telling people, let's get this thing going. So, because that's where we have to go. Some other big disappointments. I'm just going to wrap up a couple other big disappointments in the Florida series, and I'm sort of hammering the disappointments because again, we're in a good era, 7 of 8, and we just need to keep it going, right? So I don't want any letdown as fans. I'm not prepared to be like, well, we've won a bunch, I mean, obviously a loss right now will derail what is currently. As much as, again, we may have our concerns about how the teams have been playing, this is so far a championship season. We are in line right now. We're number 5 in the country. We're one of the top teams in the SEC. There are still 2 teams that are undefeated in the SEC. Alabama has lost a game, but not in the SEC, and Texas A&M, who hammered LSU, and has a very reasonable schedule. So we may still be on the outside looking in. We don't really control our destiny. We're not going to get to play Texas A&M. So if both Alabama and Texas A&M go undefeated, then I think that'll settle it. They'll be in the championship game. Ole Miss moved back up to 7 right behind us, so they're still right there with us. They also only have 1 loss, but that loss is to us. I'm not going to get into the tiebreakers yet. It's just way too early. They're crazy and complicated, so we'll cover that if and when the need gets to be. But let's just make the point that you either need to go undefeated or have 1 loss is going to be your best chance to represent be one of the 2 best teams that gets by record that gets into the SEC championship game. And from here, you could see Alabama's still got a lot of schedule left, some tough games left. Texas A&M, not as much. I mean, a few tough games, but they will be favored in all of their remaining games, having won the LSU game on the road. So right now they are in a pole position to get to the SEC championship game. But so we need to win this game and stay in line for that for playoff. And I mean, we could probably afford a loss as long as I don't know. It matters who. We've got enough good games left on our schedule. As long as we go 10-2, I think we're still in a good position to make a playoff bid. But if we want a more elite status than that, and if we want to really think that this could be a playoff, a team that can make a run through the playoff, a la Ohio State last year, then, I think we need to see continued development, and we need to see us close out some of these games, hopefully go undefeated the rest of the way. That would really put us at more of an elite level. But, a couple things that I wanted to point to. I mean, there's been some big disappointments in the Georgia-Florida series that we still owe them for. You might remember, everybody remembers the 2007 game that we won 42-30. That was the big celebration where Noshan goes over the top for the first touchdown, and Mark Richt said, hey, I want everybody to celebrate. Everybody gets out on the field. Well, they turned around and hammered us the next year and said it was definitely motivating. But 2 years after that game, Rick would go for another motivational tactic. And again, I like the idea of mixing stuff up as a coach once in a while. Maybe this makes sense. And, it's possible that Rick relied on motivation a little too much compared to some of just the hard, physical, just physically whip them at the line kind of play that Kirby is famous for. But he did the black helmet game. So that was the game where we had the black pants and the black helmet. It's 2 years after his 2009 game, I think, actually, is that. And that went really poorly, right? That was a lot of fun. We all always wanted to see that. We thought it'd be exciting if they ever did it. Mark Richt pulled it out for the Florida game. So they got the black helmets, black pants. They come out, they get hammered 41-17. So black helmets are sold at a discount and never heard from again. Some of you have them out there. I would have loved to actually have bought one and had one as a display piece. I think it was lighting kind of fell on me a little bit there. I would love to have had one. I thought they were pretty cool. I think we should at some point find a way to resurrect them. I think the way you do that is to resurrect something like that is you start wearing, that like we've sort of done with the black jerseys. We've worn them a time or two in games that we were highly likely to win. So you start to have some better vibes that go with that. I think, they could try bringing back the black pants, black helmet thing in some games that we're likely to win, and just get everybody to see them again so they don't have the negative connotation that came with the way we got hammered against Florida 41-17 when we wore them. But we could bring that back again. Also, Spurrier was really excited to know that nobody had ever scored 50 points in Sanford Stadium against Georgia. And so he made a point of doing that. In fact, we really got one of the real bad pieces of Florida history, and we're coming back to another chance to do something better or different this time around. When they were turning the old Gator Bowl into an NFL stadium for the Jacksonville Jaguars. There was those 2 years that we played on campus. And in those 2 years, we lost both of those games 52-13 and 52-17. And Spurrier made sure to go on the attack in those final drives. They didn't need the points, and it wasn't anywhere close. It was late in the game when they scored the last points that got them to 52, but he knew the history. So again, it's the kind of thing I'm talking about, right? He knew the history that nobody had ever scored 50 on Georgia in Sanford Stadium before. And this was the one and only chance Florida was going to get to play since the 30s in Sanford Stadium. And so he took advantage. He made sure they piled on the points and they got the number. And he was very proud of that and happy to have done it. And they did it when we played at the Swamp too. So either way, it worked out badly for us. So our lone history since the 30s of playing on campus, very poor. So we're going to have a chance next year. Next year and the year after, I guess we're not going to get to play on campus, but we're going to play in some alternate venues, I guess. Looks like maybe the Georgia Dome and maybe Tampa is what's lined up for the 2 years that they're going to have to be out of Everbank Stadium while they're doing the renovation. So, okay. So I'm going to close with, I'll tell you my personal history. I only went to the Georgia-Florida game once. And that's because my experience was so bad, and I should go again. And I've been thinking about it for years, and I just haven't really found the time or the opportunity where it makes as much sense for me to do it. But I'm going to have to do it again sometime, and I can come out of my shell. But I was shell shocked. I had such a horrible experience that it was hard to ever think about wanting to go again. I went to the 1991 game, which was still the old Jacksonville Municipal Stadium, aka Gator Bowl. It was a rusting metal piece of crap. Okay. It physically swayed and shook as people moved. Every time anybody did anything, it felt like you were a little worried that the thing was going to come down. My best friend and I, my best friend and roommate campus, drove down, and we had a good time driving down. That was the best part of it. We had fun driving down, and we saw some fun stuff on the road trip. One of our first significant road trips. So we drove down. We were both part of a fraternity then, and I won't get too much into fraternity lore, and I can only tell you I did not stay with the fraternity for my whole college experience. I decided that actually wasn't for me, but I was in the pledge class then, and so we joined our fraternity brothers who said they had arrangements made at a hotel. They were at a dumpy dive motel way outside of town, and again, the emphasis here was how cheap can we make it, right? So we had like 12 guys. We had like 3 rooms, and like 30 or 40 of us came. So there's like 12 or 15 guys in each room. These are nasty rooms with that kind of always moist shag carpet in the really dived nasty rooms. There was roaches, little roaches running around in the bathroom, in the bathtub that you had to wash away to, of course it was, just nasty, just nasty. And of course, we're not all, a bunch of guys, we're not all sleeping in the 2 double or queen beds, right? So a lot of us had brought some sort of bedroll or like a sleeping bag or something. We're sleeping on the floor. This is like a camp out experience. So roaches running around, not what you want to see when you're sleeping on the floor. And of course, like whatever you lay down on the floor is literally getting wet. It just like you don't necessarily feel it at first, the carpet, but it kind of has this spongy moistness to it. But it definitely, when you lay down on it and apply pressure, then you're getting moisture back up out of it, and it's just like the air in Florida. Like it's so moist all the time, this old hotel. And, the air conditioning never thoroughly sucks the, thing. And of course, there's that sort of faint, moldy smell the whole time. So this is the hotel we're staying in. It's in a dumpy, awful part of town. The only good thing I guess I can say about it is they were right. It was cheap. I think it was, it only cost us $10 or $13 or something like that a night per person to stay in this ridiculously awful hotel. So that part's fine. And there was a Waffle House in the parking lot of the hotel, so at least there was credible food nearby. We went to the landing for the big, everybody goes to the landing back then thing, and it's just a drunken, nasty, the landing is this dumpy part of a mall thing on the river back then. They had some cheesy cover bands playing. It was 3 levels of there's like 3 stories, and it's kind of open amphitheater style, and it's just jammed wall to wall with combination of Georgia, Florida fans, and everybody's drunk and pushing and shoving, and it's nasty and it's stinky and it's awful, and the music sucked and the entertainment wasn't any good, and I hated it. I hated every moment of that. So that was terrible. And then we go to the game, and the game is actually somehow worse than all of this because Shane Matthews is all SEC quarterback that year. We are not, we were actually a pretty good team. Again, we're going to this is a bowl season for us. We're going to finish in the top 25. But in this game, we are going to get hammered. We lose 45-13. The game it wasn't that close. It was just terrible. And somehow, this is the coldest I've ever been at a sporting event in my life. It was 39 degrees somehow on this day in Jacksonville, Halloween weekend, I'm sure, or close to Halloween weekend. It was misty, rainy, kind of like English mist rain the whole time. Not just outright raining much of the time, but mostly misty, cold raining, and bordering between 39 and about 44 degrees the whole time. And my buddy and I, we are not prepared for this. In my defense, I'll remind you that in this era, there is no internet on your phone. There's really no internet anywhere yet. Okay. So you can't just like, oh, what's the weather going to be like in Jacksonville? There must have been some way that I'm sure we didn't investigate very hard, but like a couple of idiots, basically, we get in the car and again, I don't think we could have really known what the weather was. You had to look on the back of the paper, and they had like 3-day forecasts on the back of the newspaper for major cities around the country. And so maybe you could have gotten the temperature from that and whether it was supposed to rain, but watch the Weather Channel endlessly until they get around to telling you what the weather might be in Jacksonville, which might take 3 hours of watching the Weather Channel. So there was no easy way to get the weather. But I guess looking back at it, smart people would have been moderately prepared for other potential options. We just were like, hey, we're going to Florida. So, I mean, I think we just brought shorts and t-shirts, a couple, we threw a few things in an overnight bag. We figured we're going for a day and a half and we're going to be in Florida. And we didn't bring coats. We didn't bring jackets. We didn't bring long anything. I think when we realized it was time to head out to the game, I think we basically put all the clothing we owned on, which was, just again, like t-shirts and shorts. And I think my buddy did have jeans. I maybe had jeans. I don't know. But, tennis shoes, we have no rain gear. We have nothing to keep us dry. We have nothing to keep us warm, nothing to keep in heat. We did run into a couple girls that we knew, and we were not cool. We were not playing it off. We were freezing cold. They were freezing cold. I guess the only thing that was kind of cool is we kind of all huddled together, but I tell you, I was so miserable. I didn't even care. It wasn't even like, oh, look, we're huddled with some girls. This is cool. This is like, we're winning, right? Like we get to snuggle up next to these girls. No, I was just like, I'm freezing myself. We ordered the only thing, they didn't have any food in concessions of any kind. And it was Dumpy Stadium, but they had let, people from local Papa John's and Domino's Pizza or whatever come in, and they were literally, they didn't have like they do now, the little small game pizzas. They literally just made a bunch of cheese and pepperoni pizzas, like small, medium, and large, and just were carrying them in boxes up and down the stands, and just like pizza, like whole pizza. And so we bought two. We gathered what money we had, and we bought two whole pizzas because the boxes are like this big. And so we were able to sort of like spread them across our laps, like open them up. Like we kept them shut at first, and we didn't eat the pizza. It was hot. And so I remember the first thing I was like, hey, and we waved down the pizza guy, like, hey, can I see that? He hands us a box. I was like, oh yeah, this thing is hot. We'll take two. So we take two of these pizzas, we lay them across our laps, we're sharing them with the girls. So we're all like huddling under two hot pizza boxes for, our lone warmth in this thing. And of course, eventually the pizza starts to get cold. So eventually we do eat the pizza, and then we start dividing the box pieces as like slight cover deflection from the misty, freezing ass cold rain, terrible, awful thing. It's a rusting metal bleacher we're sitting on. It's a wet rusting metal bleacher, so that's not making life any better. And again, we're going to lose the game 45-13. So, which again, we had some hope. Like we're going to finish ranked and in the top 25 in this season. So we came into this game thinking, hey, maybe we can win. No, we got hammered. It was terrible. I think Jesse Palmer played in that game too. I mean, Spurrier was rotating quarterbacks. Maybe, I don't know. I have to go back and look. But I know that Shane Matthews was the starter back then, and I know he torched us for like 4 or 5 touchdowns and 300 and something yards, and we just sat and watched and froze and were wet, and it was awful. So I think we drove halfway back. I don't think we even stayed after the game. I think we started driving. We're like, we're not staying in this hotel. We're not staying in Jacksonville. So that was my one and only experience going to the Georgia-Florida game. It was awful. I probably should try again, but I mean, that was just beyond terrible. So I don't know what else to say about that, but I hope people have a better experience this year. I think we should. I mean, we should win this game. We are the better team. We actually have a coaching staff that's not half fired. We certainly were a better team before that even. So we'll break that down and talk about it some more. Hope you enjoyed this little retrospective on Florida, the Florida-Georgia series history of the last 35 years, and a little bit of personal story there about Georgia-Florida. If you're going to the game, I hope you have a great time. Stay safe. Don't do anything stupid. Make sure your taunting is good-natured and fun so you don't provoke any angry responses from ugly Gator fans that are a little tired of hearing about it. So, just be careful. Be wary out there. So, should be good. Hopefully all things will go well until we meet again, which should be day after tomorrow. We'll be back with, so today is Tuesday, so we'll be back with a podcast at the latest, hopefully by Thursday, and then we'll do another one either Friday or Saturday. So we'll try to get 3 in this week and break down the game and a few more things to talk about. So hope you have a great Tuesday. Hope you have a great week, and just keep focusing on Gator hating. It's great to be a Gator hater. Say it's great to be a Gator hater. Go Dogs.